out there.
Okay, we are ready to go.
Great, thank you. Welcome to the May 12th, 2025 meeting of the Budget and Governmental Affairs Committee. My name is Steve Perez and I'm the Vice Chair of the committee. Tonight we are joined by Assistant District Manager Brendan Burke. This meeting is called to order at 6:35 p.m. As a reminder, New York State law requires all committee members who are not able to attend the meeting in person to have their cameras on and their first and last names displayed from the time the meeting is called to order until the time the meeting is adjourned. Members of the public who are attending virtually, you can raise any questions or comments that you have through the Q&A feature of Zoom. Members of the public who are here in person, you can raise any questions that you have by raising your hand. If there is time following the committee's discussion, we will field questions from the public. We do need a volunteer to take minutes tonight. If you are able to take the minutes, please let me know. Great, thank you. Anya. We will now take attendance by roll call. Brendan will conduct the roll call.
Committee members, I will call your name. When your name is called, please say present. I'll announce if there is quorum. Tanya Arias.
Present.
Jim Collins.
Here.
B. Disman won't be with us tonight. Rob Farfan.
Present.
Ned Kalani won't be with us tonight. Ava Marie Lassiter.
Present.
Rachel Patel.
Present.
And Steve Perez.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Great. The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and is reflected on the screen before you. If there is no objection, we will adopt the agenda. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the agenda, please raise your hand. Seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. The minutes from the April 14th meeting were distributed ahead of time by the board office. If there is no objection, we will adopt the minutes as drafted. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the minutes, please raise your hand.
Steve, just on one item of the agenda, what do they mean by land acknowledgements?
Perhaps we can discuss that at that time in the agenda.
All right.
It's the resolution that you all, everybody on the committee received the resolutions.
Yeah, one of two resolutions.
Oh, okay, I see it here.
Okay, so seeing no objections to the minutes from the April 14th meeting are adopted. They will soon be available on the CB6 website. I think everybody here knows the ground rules for the meeting, so we will go straight to the agenda. Item number 1, which is we have a representative from the New York City Commission on Racial Equity here joining with us this evening. Welcome. The floor is yours.
Do you have, so you don't need this?
We can tell everybody. We could either use a flash drive or I could just use what I have on screen and you can tell me.
This looks good. This looks like the most updated version, so
Okay.
we'll use that. That'll be great. I have some goodies first to hand out. I have 3 COVID tests. I don't know if y'all want those. I have only 6 of them, which is perfect. There are 6 of us here. I also have some just papers and these pens from the Commission on Racial Equity. So I'll just have this out if you don't mind taking one and passing one. And it's two papers, so. Yes, perfect. And then if y'all want pen pencils. Great, hello. Okay, where should I be, I guess?
This is great.
So you sit at the table and then the owl is essentially where you should be speaking to.
Okay, perfect, yeah.
So the owl can see, they can
Got
see you
it.
print out.
Perfect. You just let me know when to advance to the next slide.
Okay, will do.
And if it's easier, we can switch places if you want to see and look at the owl.
I'll do some swiveling.
Okay.
I think that'll be good. Okay, I can also open this if you want to take one of your else. I'm sorry. Okay, yes, of course. So hi, as we do that. Yeah, there's 2 things. My business card is on there as well. If you ever want to contact me. After the presentation,
Thank you.
some contacts. So yeah, my name is Marian Aguas. I use he, they pronouns. I'm the Community Organizing and Engagement Associate at the New York City Commission on Racial Equity. Thank you for having me tonight. I'm really glad to be here and meet all of you. Next slide. So just kind of what is on these slides. We have the core overview. I'll give you a little bit about us. I'll talk about the 2024 community equity priorities. We're currently in our second community engagement cycle, and so I'm here to kind of collect community voice as part of our work. And just a little brief overview of what's coming up next. So next slide, and next slide. So basically, Commission on Racial Equity, I don't know if y'all know anything about us or have heard about us. We are a new independent commission. We were born in 2021, actually, from Mayor Bill de Blasio's era. After the George Floyd protests, he basically, after the George Floyd protests, it was very obvious that there was just a lot of racial tension in New York, and so he put a measure on the ballot to create this commission. And so in 2022, if you remember flipping the ballot, this was actually part of the Flip the Ballot initiative. So if you voted yes on those measures, then you helped create this commission. And so that is how we got created. And so because we were born from a voter initiative, we're an independent commission, and our goal is really to hold government accountable to pushing New York City to be more racially equitable and to increase community voice in decision making. And because we're independent, we don't really take command from the mayor. We are trying to hold the mayor's office accountable again. We are really we're accountable to the people because of how we were created. So next slide. So another part of the Flip the Ballot was to create a preamble to our charter. So we hadn't had a preamble for the charter in hundreds of years, and now we do. And so it outlines the preamble outlines now the three foundational values of our charter: that our government justly values all talents and contributions, our government ensures the condition and thriving for every person, and that our government embraces vigilance, remedy, and reconstruction. And I do have a quote just below that kind of just says that, this work isn't new, that we have been doing this work and New Yorkers have been doing this work long before us. We're doing this work now so that hopefully this can continue on and have a better future for New Yorkers in the future. Next slide. So we are mandated by law to, this is kind of, what we're mandated to do. So we have identified and proposed citywide community equity priorities, and those are used to create the citywide racial equity plans, which are actually over, I think, 300 days late. So we are actually pushing the mayor to release those. Those are going to help. They basically outline, every agency has to outline how they are working towards racial equity in the work that they do. So we are actually waiting on those. Once those get released, we also review and publicly comment on them, bring in community voice to see if they're relevant to New Yorkers. We track and publicly report on agency and citywide compliance with the racial equity process. We receive complaints about agency conduct, and we also respond to the requests of the Speaker of the Council and its committees regarding racial equity concerns. Next slide. So the first mandate was to create these community equity priorities. So last year we spoke to over 4,000 New Yorkers across 50 organizations. And that was our first community engagement process. And from working with grassroots orgs, nonprofits, we really did outreach with marginalized communities who are usually underrepresented in government voice. And so from that, we created 18 priorities that I'll talk about today. Like I mentioned, we are currently in our second engagement process where we are asking community to rank the priorities based on their urgency. And also, if you have time to give us like ideas of indicators, like if we are succeeding, if the city is moving towards a a more racially equitable place, what does that look like in your life? What would that look like in a New Yorker's life? And so we're asking community members to weigh in on that as well. So I'm just gonna go through the priorities, and then if I have time, or if we have time, I did wanna maybe spend 5 minutes. If you wanna take the survey, I would greatly appreciate it. We have a QR code at the end. You can also follow along with the priorities if you wanna read it on paper. It is on the second handout that I gave you. And that QR code does take you to the survey as well. So if you wanna share it with your own community as well, we are really trying to, you know, get as many community voices as possible. Cause that is just why we're here. That is our goal. And yeah, okay, so I can start. So the 18 priorities are divided into 3 sets based on the foundational sets on the charter that I mentioned. And so this set reflects the value that the government justly values all talents and contributions. So communities mentioned that first and foremost, they want to remove the gaps. I mean, these aren't ranked, so not first and foremost, but sorry about that, excuse that. But the first one is to remove the gaps in race, gender identity, sexual orientation, age, and disability in city jobs, which basically means that we really want the people to be working in city government to reflect the diversity of New York. And to make sure that we're closing the gaps of who works there. And not only that, but they are also pushing to be doing this work inside New York City. Number 2 is to fund communities harmed by racism and injustice to help shape and get updates on New York City government. Not just, tagging the communities at the end of planning, really having them involved in funding them from the beginning so that their voices are included. Number 3 is to remove the basically pay gaps. We still know that there are many pay discrepancies for people doing the same work that are still divided across racial and gender lines. And so that is one of the goals to pushing towards equity. Number 4 is to ensure that New York City offices and partners get funds for community-based language access. There are, I forget what the stat I have, yeah, so New York City has a population of more than 3 million foreign-born residents from over 200 different countries. So we can only assume that over 200 languages are spoken here, and that no one should be barred from receiving New York City services just because they don't speak English. So that is also a priority of ours. Number 5 is to check for and remove any formulas from computer processes that may be biased based on race, ethnicity, or poverty. This is really concerning AI, algorithms, surveillance. We've seen that AI and surveillance does have biases towards darker skinned people. Sometimes AI can't really tell the difference between specific individuals depending on the color of their skin, honestly. So stuff like that. And there is an example that I found out about when I was doing this work, that there was an algorithm that hospitals were using, there was an algorithm that decided who gets prioritized to receive organ donations. And when hospitals began checking for and removing for racial bias, more people of color actually were able to receive organ donations, whereas before when the algorithm was in place, they weren't able to kind of move up that list. And so we are really pushing to, or that is included for us to push to fight against these algorithms that may have bias. Number 6 is to collect, analyze, and share data on access to government services with the public, categorizing it by specific groups harmed by racism and social injustice. This is really about transparency and desegregating data. So a lot of data is often collected and it'll be in like big groups. So for example, I am a Filipino Asian person, and when the experiences of like an immigrant Filipino person is lumped in to the general Asian category, it doesn't really tell the right stories, and we can't pinpoint government accesses of exactly who and what people need help. So desegregating data is a push towards equity, so we can understand a better picture of what communities really and what communities need and what New York needs to focus on. So that's the first set. So there's 2 more. It's gonna be a lot. And are there any questions? I did go that kind of quickly, or comments?
Does your commission work alongside the Commission on Human Rights?
Yeah, we do a lot of work with them.
Okay.
So the only thing is the way that they receive complaints is a little different than ours. So, Commission on Human Rights, when they receive complaints, it is about specific, incidents.
Right.
And when we receive complaints, it's more like, do you think this agency is doing something that, like a pattern of
Right.
agency behavior is more of what we do, but I work with Commission on Human Rights often, and we do events and stuff together, and we talk to each other a lot.
I did, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I wanted to know that, based on the fact that you're independent of the mayor's office, you had
Yes.
said, still, is your funding going to be affected based on the fact that certain funding has been taken away from the city and state based on DEI issues, so that
Mhm.
all this is so impressive, but is it in jeopardy? That's my question.
Luckily, it is not, because our commission was written into the charter because it was voted for. So as of right now, we are not in danger of us disappearing unless New York City votes us out. So New York City voted us to be created, and the way that the only way we can get dissolved is if if the new mayor or this mayor puts us on the ballot to get dissolved, and then New York City has to vote for that to dissolve us. So that, and then in terms of funding, I don't wanna say anything I don't know exactly, but no one said my job is in danger, so I'm going to. And we have talked about this, but, they've said that at least my job is secure, and we're actually hiring right now, so, from what I understand, no, we're not in danger of.
Yeah, and that's partially because the
That's
city
exact-
budget, 9% is federal, but most of it's Department of Housing Preservation, and so we luckily actually relatively
So-
little.
So you're saying most of it is from the state, is that what you're saying?
Or city, I mean, we have
The same-
personal income tax and property taxes.
Right.
Yeah,
So, but if I can find out more and let you know, but I don't think so, based on the ways that we're talking about this
Thank
in
you.
our current
Thank you.
years.
I have exactly the same concerns Eva has. Yeah,
Yes.
she asked both of my questions. It is concerning,
It
that
is
it could be revised into, a vote on the charter and all of the above. You don't have any inkling that the charter revision includes any of this to be,
No,
you don't?
no, we don't.
Okay, how
and
big is,
we-
how big is the?
The commission, we have 15 commissioners. They are on the other the paper that I gave,
Mhm.
which named the commissioners. And we are currently a staff of 12. Increasing to a staff of up to 21, I think, is the goal. So we're actually currently hiring for the next year.
Okay.
So yeah, we've had these discussions too in the office, especially because it's like, I did wake up and I'm like, am I gonna lose my job?
Yeah.
And so it has been a concern, but so it's been a concern of individuals, but it seems like, no, we're not in danger of losing
Well, that's good to know,
funding or.
but you understand our concern.
Yes, it is.
yeah,
it
but
is-
no, but
it is
I
mine as
think it
well.
could be, I mean, not to scare people about their jobs, but in a year or two, if this continues, then it will impact the city, but luckily, we have a good rainy day fund, we have reserves,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
we're in good shape, so
Yeah.
it's not gonna impact them.
We were involved in the budget hearings, so, so far for at least the next year, I know that, I believe that our budget would be, is secure from
Okay,
the
that's great to know.
current budget.
I was just gonna
Jim.
say that disaggregating data is very important,
I agree.
because I've seen that in so many things, even that we've done as community board, but other things because for Asian Americans, for instance, lumping everyone together, and it's so
Yes.
broad a community, and even in same thing with the Latinx community and same
It's in
thing,
with
yeah.
Latin communities,
Yeah.
yeah, they're all
Right.
different.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, and even
Yeah.
in Black communities, it's like,
Yeah.
if you're, Black African American, or if you're an immigrant, it's exactly.
Yeah.
If you feel so strongly about it, please tell us in the survey.
Yeah.
Perfect, I'll.
I
move
think
to-
Jim, sorry, Jim has a question. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, actually, I have a few questions. What is your budget for your department?
I don't know that. I'm not sure.
Okay, the reason I ask is that,
Comments here.
I looked up your executive director, Linda Tagani.
Yes, Linda
and
Tajani.
It appears that her salary went from $78,000 in her prior role to 140,000 in the current role. And I'm also curious, are the commissioners paid commissioners, or are they like community board members, volunteers? Because, you know, they're basically in an advisory role, the same as we are.
Right.
And also, I'm curious if any of your workers are the committee or the organization staff are working in multiple roles for the Human Rights Commission, a core, etc. And finally, is there any concern that as this matter, as this organization gets greater notice, and you know, I agree with a lot of it, especially the sexual, sex, gender equity and pay and what have you. But as this organization gets greater coverage, press coverage, are you not concerned that federal funding might be at risk from the current administration?
Okay, I'll start from the top.
Because
Oh, yeah.
Say again?
Oh, I was gonna start answering from the first to the fourth
Okay.
question.
Okay.
I believe the commissioners are paid, but I am not entirely sure about that. I could ask and kind of email y'all the answers.
At least one of them is. At least one of them is. I saw a payment for like $5,000 to
Yeah, I have a
at
feeling
least one commissioner, but I don't know
believe
how
the
long he's been on.
but I can double check. I don't wanna say things that I'm not sure of. Our budget, I'm also not sure. These are really questions that I would ask Linda or our operations person. So I am not typically involved in that work, but I can ask. There are not people working in multiple roles, but people have come, so my supervisor, for example, who is the supervisor and the manager of the community organizing team, has worked at CCHR and has worked at other kind of human rights commissions, etc. But no, we are, all the staff at CORE are full-time only working at CORE. And the last question is, I think, yes, we are concerned. You know, I think that is internally something that we are fighting for. In the last budget hearings, we weren't sure if we'd get more money or if we were asking for more staff, if that would be approved or respected, given the current climate and given the current mayor. But we are we pushed for it and we were given those lines. And so I think that we are concerned, but we do have, you know, some leeway because we're independent. So I think we're actually just trying to utilize that as much as possible to push.
If I might suggest, you might want to talk with the corporation council, because a lot of this, I think, is gonna run afoul of the anti-DEI
I will take that.
executive order, and they're gonna.
The budget's 4.8 million for next year.
For us?
Yes, for CORE.
Oh, great.
Yeah, which is like very little for city.
I
So
bet.
this is why my point is that it's not on the chopping block yet. Like, things have to get really bad for us budget wise for this to be impacted.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I will also, kind of everything I hear, I do bring back and just like assess kind of what people are saying. But yeah, thank you. I will bring that back. I do wanna move on just because there's 2 more sets, and then if we have time to do the survey, it'll only take like 5 minutes if you do it quickly. Okay, so the second set, I do think that each of these sets kind of, they get more ambitious with each set. So the second set is that the government ensures a condition of thriving for every person. And so number 7 is really about expanding access to safe and stable housing for those at risk of homelessness, eviction and deed theft. I mean, I think this is very obvious. Actually, every time I go out into community and really talk to people, housing is the number one thing that I really hear about. Especially in areas that are most affected by gentrification, at most at risk of, policing, et cetera. And so definitely we need to address stable housing. Number 8 is to evaluate and remove fines and fees when we can. We've seen this in the library. They removed the fees, late fees at the library, and so more people actually return books than ever. And more people were able to access free library services after fees. And we also actually want to, by the same token, increase fees when we can. So let's say there's a landlord with a 3-unit apartment versus a landlord with, let's say, 3 20-unit buildings. If they get like trash and recycling fees, they pay the same fees, but equity means that the landlord with, a 400-unit building should actually maybe have a higher fee than the landlord with like 3-unit building. So, just evaluating the fees that the city is having, to be more equitable. Number 9 is to use and expand non-punitive responses to mental health and all crises. We've seen this too often where someone experiencing a mental health crisis in the subway, or when they're faced with the New York City police, they sometimes, a lot of the times, are met with violence and sometimes death. And so we need to really make sure that we are expanding mental health services so that the NYPD is not the only people responding to these crises. We can't expect them to respond to everything. And we need to have specific, just kind of more specific care towards what happens to New Yorkers during a crisis. Number 10 is to reduce racial and economic segregation and the education gap by increasing support to schools. Segregation in schools is still really obvious. Before this, I was teaching a lot in New York City. I was in a nonprofit, so I taught at a lot of different schools, and oftentimes there'll be like 4 schools in one building. And some of the schools will have after-school programs, and they'd have working water fountains, or they'll have a computer lab, and then right across the hallway, some schools won't, right? And so it's actually a very apparent case of like literally like segregated schools. But why they're all in the same building, why can't they kind of have access to the same material or these same things? And so that is definitely something we also want to push towards and address. Number 11 is to expand health, mental health, substance abuse, and disability services. And not only that, but they need to meet the needs of families and individuals harmed by racism and social injustice. So this is also really about culturally competent care, because it is very discouraging for a Black and brown person, let's say, who's been incarcerated, to go to a doctor or a mental health service provider who doesn't understand that experience. Then they won't really go to the doctor. If a queer person goes to a doctor and they're not aware of that, then that does discourage people from going to the doctor. So not just expanding services, but that these services are culturally competent. Number 12 is to remove costs and barriers to CUNY enrollment and retention. So actually CUNY used to be free before 1969. CUNY became desegregated, so they started allowing people of color into CUNY, and that is when tuition started at CUNY. And so we don't think that's a coincidence. That's just another barrier to entry for people of color to receive the same education as was allowed for white people. And so we are also pushing, and New York City community told us that CUNY to be free is something that they would like to push for. And number 13 is to increase access and lower the cost to basic needs such as food, transportation, medical, and housing. So like roughly 40% of New York City residents still experience difficulty buying food. Food deserts are often aligned with usually Black and Latinx communities in New York City, like the Bronx or in Brooklyn. And so we need to kind of close the gaps between the access that New Yorkers have, regarding that. But yeah, questions about this set?
This is quite an ambitious set.
Yeah,
And it's gonna, and it seems like, you know, you would have to have the cooperation of many, many agencies
yes.
in order to implement all of this. How much clout do you have in making these agencies, make sure that they comply with these
Yeah,
priorities? Because, you know, you're talking about housing, you're talking about education, you're talking about
Yeah.
health, you know, these are all different entities. How
Yeah.
do you impose your will, so to speak?
great question. So our clout is only as great actually as, the community voice that we're really like garner or kind of capturing right now is one answer. But another thing is we also have like a legal team. So for example, ACS or oh my God, why can't I remember what ACS stands for? But child services, right?
Adult, child
Adult, yes,
Administration for.
Administration for
Yes,
child
administration for
services,
child
yes,
services.
right.
For example, we're currently working on holding ACS accountable, and that is something that we're pushing legally also. And so when we're talking about holding agencies accountable, we are currently partnering with legal services. We're partnering to help change legislation about that. We started from hearing about it in the community, and then that kind of works its way up to us, and then we decide kind of what legislation to support. And so hopefully changes and accountability will be made in ACS with us backing that work. I know that, you know, when we hear from community, we bring those conversations into the budget hearings. That's another thing. So we were included in the budget hearings in this last cycle. This is also why we want the mayor, anyway. So that's another thing. So we want the budget to reflect these things that we hear. And so we do represent what we hear from community when the budget is happening. So there's that. But it really is, you know, the more that we hear from community, the more that we can say to these agencies, we can partner with agencies that have teeth, we can legally, et cetera, because we can be like, we heard from so many people, like this is where the power really comes from this commission.
When you mention legal services, are we talking about in-house legal services, or what kind of legal services are we talking about?
We have a specific, I don't think that we're offering them. I mean that we have lawyers, like legislative. We have lawyers working on, like people who have law degrees who are working on how to support changing laws or proposing legislation that like deal. So they're the ones working, for example, on the ACS stuff.
And they're in the commission?
They're in staff.
They're in staff?
Yes, so it's kind
So
of.
that's my question, right?
Yes, they're working as staff, in the commission. So I believe if you, on our website, you can see Rachel and Keiru are, they're not on that page because only the commissioners are on the page,
Mhm.
on that page. But yeah, they are working, to help support legislation that pushes towards these goals. I
actually have a question.
Yeah.
I guess you were starting to answer the question I was going to have, but I'll still ask my question anyway, which is, does CORE go into details as to how it believes some of these priorities should be addressed? And the reason I'm asking is, like, looking at this list,
Yeah.
a number of these align very well with some of our top budget.
Yeah, I was thinking the same
Right.
thing, yeah.
Provide more affordable housing, provide more supportive housing.
Yeah.
Housing for seniors, so,
Yeah.
you know, I'm curious about that.
So if I'm understanding the question correctly, if we have like data or kind of.
Like, if you all, like, go at all into the hows to address some of these things. Not just that these things should be addressed, but some of the hows.
We do. We do, and we go over it when we do like our info sessions at CORE, which we have one tomorrow at 12 p.m. virtually. But if you wanna also see kind of the data, let's start with the data. We do have kind of so every single one of these priorities, we have these really great, data sets of like what this looks like tangibly in terms of numbers and data. We have those on our website. First of all, and then how, we do have examples of how, but it happens during like presentations. But that is a good, thing to know. Yeah,
But it's good to know that you have the data, because we're doing advocacy and you're doing advocacy, and the data behind it
Yeah.
helps for that
so
advocacy.
if you want to see that, literally every
Yeah.
single
Yeah.
number that I'm showing, we have, data sets
Yeah.
that are, and like, I think they're really pretty, the little pages, that we have, those are all on our website.
Okay.
Yeah, so if that helps your work too,
Yeah.
that's what they're for, is so that community can use them, as they wish.
Jim has a question.
Oh, yes.
Jim, go ahead.
Hi, yeah, I'm just wondering what metrics you use to measure the core group's performance.
We're actually, that is part of the survey, and it's not necessarily CORE's performance, cause we're trying to measure if the city. CORE's performance should be reflected in the city, because our goal is to hold city government accountable to these racial equity plans. And so actually what we are doing now, is collecting community voice on these priorities, if these are based on the urgency, but also what indicators show to them that we are, progressing on these. And so, that is something we're currently working on in the second community engagement cycle. And so I'm not sure what documents you have, Jim, right now on the Zoom. But we do have our survey that, it will be a QR code in like 2 slides, I think. So you can kind of propose indicators or measurements of what that might look like if you have opinions on that. We'd love to hear it, actually.
Right. Can I get that sent to me? Because I'm viewing this through my phone and looking at the agenda and your other materials on my laptop. So if somebody there can send it to me, appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know
Thank
if you
you.
heard that, Jim. Brendan is gonna send it to you.
Yes.
Brendan, yeah, okay, thanks,
Yeah.
Brendan.
I would just say that for the performance, because the controls office does all these audits, right, where they are showing that kind of performance, especially on
Yeah.
things like some of the stuff you've talked about and the disaggregated data and how they've been trying to do that, and if it's impacting communities or not, or the language access stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and so this is also why we really are pushing the mayor to release the city-wide equity priorities. So
Mm.
these priorities we heard from the city were used to inform the city-wide ones that the mayor and every agency actually has to now create racial equity plans, and then, but the mayor just hasn't released these because he's the mayor. As we are aware, so we are pushing to have him release that, because I think it's new that the agencies even have to be thinking about these things, and so in terms of measurement of whether they're improving, that is what we're working towards. Yeah, so, and
Is there a time frame where they need to?
yeah, they're like 400 days, they're 300 days late. We released a press release, we are pushing the commissioners, we did a few things, and we are, doing a few things currently. I'm not particularly involved in that, but if you want more information on how we are trying to push the mayor, but also if, and how you can get involved in that, because I think it is important that he needs to release those. I can also give more information, but
Would he be hampered by the policy that's coming in from doing away with DEI, and he just doesn't wanna move forward with this?
probably, there are a few, I don't know why I don't know exactly why, but we can.
we
he's
can all
not-
guess, I guess. I would say it's also, this seems like very difficult to get 62 city agencies to do these
But they-
metrics.
I believe that we're literally just waiting for him to release them. Every agency
so
has
they've done it.
already
Wow.
written
I'm
their
impressed.
plan.
Yeah.
As to how they're going to address these in the agency. It's
Yeah.
literally, we're waiting on the mayor and he's the last piece.
I think Tanya may be
Yeah,
onto
so
something.
I think I am. I was thinking, this is
I,
really
you know,
difficult to do.
I have this tendency to just go straight to the heart of the matter.
Yeah.
It's
And,
probably
you know, it's my mathematical mind just goes straight to it.
right. So we
No beating
are,
around the bush.
Yeah.
if you want to help us keep pressing him, yeah.
That's a resolution we could write.
We can write
Yeah.
a resolution.
Wow,
Yeah.
we would love, I would,
Yeah.
who
we
do
can
I
write a
follow up
resolution.
on that with?
Yeah, you
Okay,
can, the
you
office,
know,
or, yeah,
I will follow up on
yeah.
that. That sounds great. Okay.
I think we'd be
Yeah.
open to writing a resolution asking for
Amazing.
that report to be released.
That would be great. Thank you so much. On that note, I'll finish off with the third set. So this is the
Sorry,
last.
which report was that, Gabe?
The-
Which report was
the
that?
So, Jim, the mayor, so they've had all the agencies kind of, the impact question that you were asking, like, how are you monitoring and evaluating the impact? Agencies have been required to do that, and they've done it, and there's a report, but the mayor has not released that report. So
I see. Okay,
I
thank you.
suggested
All
that
right.
we write a
Sorry,
resolution.
sorry, I didn't mean to
So-
interrupt. I just didn't hear
Yeah.
what the reference was. I was cooking a chicken.
Yeah.
This is actually a perfect example of like what clout we have, and it's really. It is both a positive and makes our work difficult and also. Anyway, but we have just as much power as we have community, and so, you know, in a mayoral election, if he does wanna get. Elected again, but then we have community support saying like, well, you didn't do this, right, and we're asking for it, or you are actually by law. He is by the charter, he's late by this amount of time. Then he can get swayed, right? We also, because he is late by the charter. We can take legal action, I think
I
that's
was
a
gonna-
discussion that's
yeah.
happening that I am not. Not qualified to speak on, because I'm not involved in that process, but I have heard, you know, like, legal action is an option. That we can take as an independent commission. So yeah, there are options, but for now, as where I'm involved as the community organizing and engagement. Team, I'm kind of just, if you want, and collecting community voice to kind of back up our work. But whichever kind of thing. Oh, no, okay, that's really exciting. Great. And okay, the last set. So this is that the government embraces vigilance, remedy, and reconstruction. And so number 14 is to expand. Number 14 is to expand access to those harmed by racial and social injustice to inform local emergency planning. And so, you know, we see this in New York a lot. During COVID-19, anytime there's flooding from the hurricanes, the aid that gets received from communities is very disparate, and it is often along racial lines. During COVID-19, not even China, like in Chinatown, for example, they were not given extra help for their small businesses, and so a lot of their aid came from mutual aid or from within the community. And so we want to also address and close that equity gap. Number 15 is to remove barriers and increase access for people harmed by racial and social injustice to learn about, buy, and keep ownership of property. So there are a lot of barriers for home ownership for people of color. And but they should also be able to build generational wealth here in New York. So that is also something. Number 16 is ensuring all city employees and their agencies, including the police and social service providers, are held accountable for any harm and abuse of power. We spoke a little bit about this already, but this is kind of a more general one. Number 17 is to remove the gaps in racial, gender identity, sexual orientation, age, and disability access to job training and funds to start businesses. So, you know, a lot of times gentrification is started, or what it looks like is someone there's a community and then someone will start a business and they're not even from the community. And that's how people get pushed out from their communities they've lived in. And so a way to kind of help fix that or ameliorate that is that to remove to increase access to the job training and funds for specific communities would be helpful. And 18 is to expand services to prevent, intervene, and provide care for people and families harmed by policing, jails, and court supervision. So I hear this a lot in community when I'm out there. People have described it like a revolving door. People will get out of jail, they end up back in the street and then back in the hospital, in the ER, and then back in the street or in jail again. And we really need to invest in rehabilitation or push New York City to invest in rehabilitation services so that this cycle can end. There used to be GED and degree programs for people who were previously incarcerated, but a lot of those have been defunded. And so bringing those back, these programs used to be there and they can be there again. So that is a way to help that one specifically. So those are the community equity priorities. I don't know how we're doing on time. If there's time to do the survey. That is
This right here with this people are that,
I would suggest, since this is a public meeting and
Yeah,
we have everybody
I'll do it.
do that
Yeah.
on your own.
Okay.
So that, and everybody will work at their own pace on the survey, so.
yeah, it makes
Okay,
sense because this is
We don't-
a live public meeting, so
Oh,
I think I don't think it's right for
Got
us to
it.
take a survey for it.
The survey is on the QR code on this one, the other paper. That QR code takes us to our events. So it's the,
And
QR
Brendan,
code.
you can just drop it into the link so that it's available to.
Yeah.
if you go on to the next
Mine
slide,
is
so
not
if
registering.
you share this, I don't know if you share the slides with your members, but it
Yes.
is also.
Yeah, try that one. It's up on the
Yes.
screen.
yeah, because this one's not working.
Oh, no, okay. I'll
Yeah,
double check.
another option is, you can email the link to me and I can share it with committee members.
I can do that, I will follow up on that, yeah. So my tasks are,
And you're trying to get at as broad reach for this as possible, so you want us to share with other people. So
yes,
perhaps, can we put in our newsletter too, Brenda?
Yeah,
Yeah, if y'all want a broad reach for this,
Yeah.
yeah, you can share this in our email.
CB6 newsletter
Yeah.
goes to anybody,
It goes to-
the entire,
Yeah, so it goes,
anybody.
yeah.
so why don't I, in my follow-up email, kind of send some link, like the link to the form and whatever relevant kind of links, so.
Yeah, it'll also be an opportunity to introduce the community more broadly to the work that you all do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we were voted for by New Yorkers, and so we are out here just kind of letting people know that we're here. I think people get excited, people vote for things and then don't know what happens, and it's like, no, we're here, we were created. And we're just trying to maintain and foster that, that relationship because that's why we were here. So I want to make sure that New Yorkers kind of are also.
No, it's a good idea, Kim, because those people sitting at this table are people who don't ever miss an election and flip the
Oh,
ballot.
Okay,
And yet I still was like, when I saw this on the agenda, I'm like, oh yeah, that thing got created. And I didn't know, yeah. And I'm like the person who pays attention. So I imagine broader people.
yeah, so we're
Yeah.
trying to, especially now that we are,
Yeah.
increasing staff and increasing what we're doing. We're just trying to get out there.
Yeah.
And then also I can just I can finish up the presentation. I just have a few more slides. Just to show us of kind of what we're working on next. Like I mentioned, we are on the second engagement process, so by the end of this, we will release our citywide indicators to understand how we can monitor the city's progress to advancing racial equity and social justice. So also that kind of answers or gives a little bit of an answer to Jim's question. That is our kind of next, what will come from this engagement cycle. We want to advance the strategy to release the racial equity plans that I've been mentioning, the citywide ones, and the city and the mayor's office is also supposed to release a true cost of living in New York report that is both. So those were supposed to be released around the same time, so they're both 450 days late, so we are advancing that strategy. And We are currently working on accountability mechanisms to address the history and ongoing practice of separating Black and Latino children from their family. That's the ACS work that I currently
Yeah.
mentioned we're doing.
Mhm.
We are establishing a New York City on reparations. That is actually also a part of our mandate. I think it's local law 91 and 92 that core is being responsible for. And so we are currently working on that and establishing a citywide truth, healing, and reconciliation plan to begin to heal from racial and social injustice from the history of New York. But yeah, Jim?
Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, among your to-dos work product, I would strongly urge you to define the term equity for purposes of city government. Does it mean roughly equal distribution among? I mean, I can see it like gender equity in terms of wages and what have you. But does it mean this percentage of people in this role, that sort of thing? And that if you do that, then you're running basically a quota system, which is the Supreme Court says is illegal. So please define equity in your process of this work that you're doing, so that people who do have executive positions within the city government can comply with your definition as best they can.
Yes, okay, I like that a lot. I don't know if we have a running definition of equity.
That was the problem that the White House had too, by the way.
Got it. Actually, I will.
Yeah, and confusing equity with quotas, because we haven't had quotas for anything because it's been unconstitutional, but people don't seem to realize that. They don't get a promotion, they think it was because of some quota.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice, okay, I will, thank you
yeah.
for that, I actually will bring that back.
I mean, the way it was defined in the Biden administration was basically equal outcomes from unequal starting points. And I don't think that was appropriate. I don't think anybody would. I mean,
Okay,
anybody
I will
fair-minded.
bring it back. Yes, and we are trying to be kind of New York specific to what
Yes.
equity is, because the history of New York is very specific as to every locale. Of what equity would look like, so I will take that advice back, actually.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
just from my experience with this, right, and I'm on the board of a community development corporation, so that works in immigrant communities. So when we're looking at equity and outcomes, is something like, let's use the example of the Asian American community, right? 19% of the population, 3% of the city's funding was going to Asian American communities. So they started looking at this equity, and then it has increased, but it's not commensurate to the population, right? In terms of all kinds of other health services, any type of mental health, housing, all those kind of,
Okay,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very, obviously.
I
it's a
can
very
understand.
complex Topic, and
Yeah.
because you
Yeah.
guys are looking at so many different dimensions of
It's very.
the city, how it's delivering services, it will probably look different. What that equity looks like, depending on what kind of problem you're seeking to address.
yeah,
Right, so it's hard to come up with kind of a universal, but I think to conceptualize that in a way that it can be applied differently in different cases,
Yeah.
so that it makes sense.
I think too, maybe
Right.
after the second
Right.
engagement process and hearing what that looks like for the, like, indicators too, might also help us hone in on that definition of what that would look like, once we are progressing towards this.
You cannot do this without metrics, okay? Like,
Yeah,
Um,
I
what do they call it? Well, I'm just gonna say, early low birth weight babies, babies and mothers who die in birth. I mean, there are measures for that. There are statistics for that. If they're not being collected by the city, there are national statistics. But if the city's not collecting them, then the city is making making a mistake, because it's, we need to deliver. If we find, for example, if we do that measure and we find out that, that there's, say, a 15% or a 40% higher level of low birth weight babies born in the African American or the Hispanic community, that means we need to deploy more resources for early child prenatal care to those communities. That's the sort of thing you guys ought to be. I mean, my view. I mean, I'm just a manager, but
Yeah, I mean,
that's my sense of things.
I mean, just as a fact, that study of maternal health care in the city was being done at a broad level by Columbia University, and funding for that has now stopped. Because that was a federal funding cut, with the cuts that everyone's heard about that happened with Columbia. And I think most people know this, that in certain communities in New York City, 1 out of 5 women are still dying in childbirth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Especially Black women.
Yeah, it's in the Black community.
It's in the Black community,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I would suggest, Jim, if you want numbers and data like that too. Because we do have really, really good data people working with us. There are statistics and stats on all of these, like, but what I'm presenting is kind of conceptual, and broad. I am in the community, I'm like a yapper, so I'm in community organizing. But there is the data on all of this, on our site for every priority, and I do imagine that.
You guys are collecting it, but, right. You guys are collecting it, but are you pushing it down through the agencies? In other words, is DSNY finding out that, garbage pickups don't occur? Is DSNY tracking its data? Is
Right.
give me another agency. The police, NYPD, I think, does a pretty reasonably good job of tracking racial disparity data, and there are other agencies though that don't, and you need to force the data collection down to the city agencies. You can't just hope that it's there and bow out if they don't have it.
I do think,
am I being clear?
Yes, and I agree. I mean, I agree, absolutely. I do think that I'm not sure what kind of racial equity responsibilities agencies had before this, but since this is part of the thing that we're trying to get the mayor to release, but the agencies have seen these priorities that we made with community. They have to now create their own racial equity plan, so every city agency is now required to say to kind of address what you're getting at, which is how are the agencies themselves also addressing these priorities in the social justice work. And the collection of all the agencies' racial equity plans are the citywide plan, which we are waiting to get released.
That was going to be my question, is this something that depends on that report getting released, or the agencies already have all this in hand?
Have all of
your priorities?
Oh, the agencies have that, and from what we understand, the agencies already wrote their plans.
So everything is done?
Yes, they were literally waiting on the mayor to make that public.
Yeah, it's an aggregated report, a citywide report, because the agencies have already done their work.
Yes, and it's sitting there and we're waiting for the mayor to release that report. Which is what we're trying to also push the mayor to do.
And this
The
would be
number
talking
two
point for
vote.
some
I
candidates.
just wanted to know, do you think that
Maybe we need to
this
contact some
is
candidates.
being
Tell them.
possibly held until at least after the primary? Do you think it has something to do with that?
He's not running in the primary anymore, though. He's running as an independent.
I know, I mean,
Yeah.
until.
general.
election is,
Yeah, and that's in general.
Maybe
Yes.
we thought it was because of his hearing at first, and
Which was
it's-
gone now, but it
Yes.
seems that if you're saying, did you say almost 400 days or?
Yes,
To me, it's connected with that in some way, and I was just curious.
yeah, I am less privy to the politics stuff, but I wish Linda came, Linda
Yeah.
does know a lot more, cause she's in a lot of the meetings or kind of I'm a little new to city gov, so I'm like, I don't even. Yeah, I mean, I think it's politics is why at the end of the day, it's
Yeah.
politics as to why he
Has he been silent as to why it hasn't been released?
Yes. we've been-
Completely silent?
Yes, and we've, released things to the press. We've tried different techniques that have worked before to get him to release things.
Should we ask his rep at
Yeah,
full
I think
board on
that-
Wednesday?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we can ask his rep at full board and we can write a resolution. I don't think we need to talk
Yeah.
about this further because first of all, we're also a nonpartisan organization.
Rarely.
Yeah.
So I can't say,
Yeah, we should, I think we're going
Thank
into the realm of being political and I don't want to do that.
but yes, please, I think, outside of politics, I think this is important work and it is community voice, like we've heard from so many New Yorkers, and so we are pushing to have this work out, and it would help, if the mayor did release that, so that we can continue to hold government accountable, that's part of it. Once we understand what the agency's plans are to address this or to help push this work forward, then we can continue to kind of answer some of the questions that you had, like, what teeth do we need to hold different agencies accountable? I guess we'll have a better idea if we understand what their goals are, what they plan to do. So as of right now, we're doing our best, but when that plan gets released, we can do even more.
So maybe a resolution is one of the teeth we can add
Yeah.
to this.
And I think your idea of asking the representative.
Yeah, and
I would appreciate it. So I will
Yeah.
include that in the email with
Yeah.
other things. I think that's the end, or there's one last slide, which has our socials. How you can connect if you want to do this presentation again, if you have specific boards or another community board thing, please let me know, you have my card. Please take the survey, share it if you can, we really want, the survey closes in August, I believe August 31st. So there's time. The QR code is there, and also I'm gonna email you the link to the form. This is our social media, and if you have any orgs or suggestions of where else that we can promote our work or share with community what we're doing, please let me know. I am now available to all of you.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Wonderful presentation. Thank you, yeah. Did
Okay.
anyone should I just leave these here?
Yes.
You can leave.
Perfect, great.
Leave it.
I'll take a go with it.
Great.
Oh,
So
that- And hope we don't have to use it, but,
Take one and pass it around.
So, thank you, and
thank
we
you
all
very much.
Thank you, thank you.
can move
Do you
on.
want extra things, papers?
I would like,
Right.
yeah, just.
You should poll it.
Yeah, since I work at the CB6 office, it's.
It's always good to
educate
have.
Myself as well, in terms of.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no, speakers.
It's two times. What are the expansions?
Great.
They should poll the departments, the various city departments, or do a customer satisfaction survey and include the racial elements of the poll.
So following up with the email,
That'll tell you right up front.
so. an email about support for that.
Oh.
Is
I
it by
saw
July?
that, yes.
Oh, July,
But I think they have,
a year from that date?
yeah,
Yeah,
and you can look up when they're.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
If you want more to, you can email me, we have like 200 and,
Oh, wow.
wow.
Yeah,
so
Hopefully we won't need them.
yeah.
Thank you so
Okay.
much.
ever,
Yeah,
you know where to reach.
yeah.
Okay, so any last comments on this item before we move on? Okay. Let's move on to the second agenda item, which is discussion of
Just
the potential. The
Poll it.
potential tax exemption changes to municipal bonds resolution, which you all received by
I
email.
tend to
and-
be very circumspect of anything Bill de Blasio did.
Oh, okay. Moved on to the
We've
next
moved
item.
on to the next topic, Jen. So I'll turn it over to Reshma, who
okay.
worked on this
Yeah,
resolution.
I think everybody, we discussed this pretty in detail at the last meeting, so I'm not gonna take up people's time here. But as we discussed last time that one of the things, that's in the tax bill being considered is getting rid of the tax exemption of municipal bonds. And the way we fund capital projects in the city largely is through the issuance of tax exempt municipal bonds. And many of the things that we request in our capital budget would be impacted if this tax exemption went away, because the cost of borrowing would become higher. And as noted in 2017, the Tax Act got rid of the ability for municipalities to advance refund and refinance at a lower cost. And so we've already been hurt in the past because of it. And so I thought we should write a resolution, and particularly to bring it to our elected congressional people to put this in for, the forefront. And then since our last meeting, I think Jesus and Sandy did meet with Congressman Nadler, and I did have a conversation with Sandy, and she said, they brought it up with him and we can present the resolution.
And he said what?
That, yeah, he would bring it up, and to send him the
Nadler
resolution.
said that?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
I see.
yeah,
Okay.
Sandy
But
had.
Sandy
mentioned it.
said it would be helpful to have a resolution so that
Yeah.
it's written and it's sent
And
to
that
him
he-
and it's.
Yeah,
That
but we had
he's-
already-
that
yeah.
He's going to bring it up.
Yeah, but we had already discussed having a resolution,
I
and
see,
we already
I see,
created that,
okay.
yeah. So I don't know if people got a chance to look at it.
I did.
Yeah, and
I
I
just,
did-
I
did
just
too.
added
Yeah.
one, there's a
Yeah.
part in red, do you wanna go to that, because I added this.
yeah,
I just thought there was the kind of a piece of information that's
Yeah.
good to know, it's like, why are we raising this now?
yeah,
It's because we are concerned that this 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act is sunsetting at this year, right?
yes. No,
And
a really
that's the
good point.
reason why
It's a really good point.
it's come up,
Yeah,
it's like
Yeah.
there's been discussions about how to change
Yeah,
the tax code or whatever you call it, the
Yeah.
tax legislation. So that's kind of prompting this.
yeah. I mean, I wonder if it's worth asking in it to say that we also want to amend that to 2000, because I was thinking new tax bill, but it's actually an old tax bill, right? And if they're gonna reevaluate the 2017 tax bill, then perhaps they reevaluate the provision there that took away the ability to refinance tax exempt debt. Because that advanced refunding thing hasn't hurt us, because rates have been so low that a taxable rate in the last 4 or 5 years has still been lower than a taxable rate, a tax exempt rate, say you issued a bond in the 80s, or even until the early 90s, rates were still higher on a tax exempt basis. But now we're going into an environment where we are gonna see higher interest rates. And
Yeah.
I mean, we've already seen that. Anybody who has a home mortgage is seeing that, right? And so, and that becomes harder. Perhaps we add that line in.
Well, I just wanted to know if you wanted to include that. I know that in the resolution you had put that the tax exempt status does not impact the federal expense to begin with. You had that lower in the resolution. If you wanted to put this underneath it, it just sort of, since it's been.
Okay, I don't
present-
remember that line, but I'm not
It's
sure.
further down, I believe it's. Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
without contributing to the federal deficit.
Yeah,
So did
yeah.
you want to put that, what you had just mentioned, did you want to put that with that part of the resolution, the part that's in red?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I was thinking of just adding it where the red is, but,
Oh, you mean, but combining them?
Combining,
Yeah,
combining
that's what I'm talking
yeah,
about.
because we're referring to 2017.
Right.
If we wanted to, again, it's, it's an old issue now. I mean, it's hard to believe, but it's like 8 years already, so.
But are you saying it's something that is it in the resolved that we're
Yes,
asking
you're
them
right, it
to,
wouldn't be in a whereas, it would be in the resolve.
asking them to
And
reconsider?
Reconsider,
Yeah,
yeah, and I can write that and put it in. And we
So-
don't have to waste our time with the wording right now, but we could add another resolve, therefore we resolve that the ability to advance refund tax exempt bonds be,
well, let's see if we can,
yeah.
Brendan can do it right
Yeah.
now, because then we'll be able to vote on it. Yeah.
Now, because
Yeah, we
this
really
is-
should.
This is going to be before a full board on Wednesday.
Yeah, we don't have
so
time, we don't
Jim
have.
has a question.
Jim,
Yeah, the thing about this, as well as the overall state and local tax deduction, is that it mostly disappears when one gets into the alternative minimum tax. So
I mean, you're looking
we-
at it from
we
your
can-
personal taxes. I'm looking at it from the issuer side. Our cost of borrowing increases.
No, I understand that,
Yeah.
but I think if you speak with any financial advisor, they'll tell you that if you're gonna get into municipal bonds, the tax exemption isn't going to do you much good with munis, because they tend to, once you get above a certain level of income, which is generally the people who invest in munis.
Yeah, because
they
because of the
tend to-
AMT, because of the AMT, but
The AMT
yeah,
tends to kill them.
yeah, but this is not
Huh?
for individuals. This is for our capital budget, the way our capital budget is funded.
No, I fully understand that.
Yeah,
I'm just saying
Yeah.
that the fact that they're, in other words, when you put the AMT out,
Yeah.
or when you issue the bonds, okay, you should, investors should basically treat them as though they are taxable. Because they ultimately are, once you start screwing around with the peculiarities of the AMT, just as the state and local tax deduction is. So I mean, in terms of, politics and making, oh, I stood up for the state and local tax deduction, or I stood up for municipal bonds, fine, all well and good. But in reality, when you get to the hardcore of it, it doesn't make a difference. It doesn't make a difference to the issuer in terms of their marketing. That, they can say, oh, AAA rated municipal bonds, triple tax free. Well, that triple tax free basically ends the minute you hit the AMT threshold.
Yeah, but you're still issuing that debt at a
Yeah.
30% discount, right? So instead of having, you're having a lower rate. So
No, you're not.
Yeah, it's like, you're gonna have, the tax exempt rate is if in a perfect market, the tax exempt rate
not
is 70% of the taxable rate. If you're borrowing and you get you're getting the
That's
70% of the rate,
what-
then you have a lower cost of borrowing.
In terms of what actually happens, though, all right, with the people who buy munis, it doesn't affect them at all. And it's as though it's a taxable bond, because the AMT kicks in.
Okay, can we
They're
just write
taking,
this resolve and then just vote, because
so,
it's almost 8
that's all
o'clock.
it is.
Yeah,
What's the resolve?
Yeah.
So be it further resolved that it be reconsidered. That the ability for municipalities to advance refund taxes and bonds be reinstated.
The ability for
Municipalities to advance refund tax exempt bonds be reinstated.
Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think so. Made everyone else. I don't know.
I'm not sure. I don't know what does advance refund
So
mean?
it's, how if you're gonna, interest rates have gone down, now you're gonna refinance your mortgage.
Okay.
So they would refinance the bond at a lower interest rate. So it's the same thing. And
Okay.
that ability was taken away.
Okay. Got it. Would
voting?
refinance be a
I
non-proper
mean, they call
term
it,
to use, or is
they
that
call
how
it
it's used?
advanced refunding, and there's,
Okay.
yeah, and there's a reason why the
There's a
refinancing
technical,
in
yeah.
advance is a technical
Okay,
thing, yeah.
that's fine then. That, and who are we asking? That it be the federal legislation?
Yeah, the ability to advance and be reinstated in the tax code,
In-
but, yeah.
In federal legislation?
In
or the
federal
tax code?
legislation, yeah.
Okay, so that's just cool. Can we just add that
In federal legislation.
in federal legislation at the end of the
The last,
very last sentence?
Be reinstated.
yeah,
In federal legislation, just because
yeah,
like we're clear who we're asking.
yeah,
That, I mean, it's probably clear. But,
Yeah.
you know. Okay. Does anyone else have any edits? Or comments? Okay,
You
Okay,
added the
should we
one in
vote?
red, so we just.
oh, yeah,
Yeah,
the one in red I just added to say.
yeah,
That's the reason why we're kind of bringing this up.
yeah.
Because then it goes on to say any reduction and elimination of federal.
Right.
So that just kind of makes the
It
link
ties it
saying
in.
why,
Yeah.
Yeah,
why,
no, it's a great
who's,
change.
who's
It's a good
doing,
change.
you know,
Yeah,
who's
it's a good
changing,
addition.
saying that we're gonna reduce.
Yeah,
All right.
okay, so.
Should we go ahead and vote?
Yeah.
Brendan?
There should be a motion.
Yes.
Oh,
So
Can
can
I
I,
make the motion? Or
yeah,
you-
let's take a motion to vote. Take a vote.
someone second?
Second,
Okay, we will take a vote on the resolution.
Okay, when I call your name, please say whether you are in favor, opposed, abstain, or not entitled. Tanya Arias.
In favor.
Jim Collins.
Come back to me, I gotta think about it. I'm inclined to abstain, but, all right, go ahead, okay, yes,
Abstain or in favor?
I'm in favor, I guess.
Rod Farfan.
in favor.
Ava Marie Lassiter.
In favor.
It's just
Bishop
performative,
Patel.
that's the thing.
In favor.
And Steve Perez.
In favor.
With all 6 committee members in favor, this resolution passes and will be before the full board on Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thank you for writing it.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you
That was
for the
great.
work.
Thanks.
Now we move on to the next resolution, or the next agenda item, which was discussion of adding land acknowledgement to the start of CB6 meetings. So, that's also a resolution that Rushmore worked on.
Yeah,
so
but
I don't know if
anyone's
you-
welcome. I mean, you know, or Rob or, you know, anyone who wants to talk about it, welcome to talk about it. These people, everyone contributed to this. And thank you for sharing.
Where did this
Sure.
resolution come from?
We discussed
Which
it at the last, meeting.
Okay,
At all.
I was absent the last one,
Last committee meeting.
okay. I read it. I'm sorry, let me get recognized.
Yes, go ahead, Jim.
I grew up on an Indian reservation. I was born there. It's a town called Salamanca, New York, which is entirely located on an Indian reservation. Some of my best friends growing up were Seneca Indians, the guys I played sports with, the guys I went to school with, what have you. I think this is frankly a ridiculous resolution. I mean, if a better and more appropriate acknowledgement of the Lenni Lenape, I believe would be in some form of a memorial or a statue, something of that nature. Repeating this as some kind of virtue statement at the beginning of each meeting just strikes me as absurd. You know, it's kind of like when I played football, it was with the Salamanca Warriors, and the state, as many of you know, tried to demanded that the city of New York, or the city of Salamanca, change the name Warrior to something else, because supposedly the term warrior was offensive to Native peoples. It's not offensive. It's ridiculous. Some of the people who opposed the change most were guys I played ball with back in the 70s. So that's my view of this. I will be voting no. I think it's a ridiculous notion.
Just wanted to
Go ahead,
say,
Eva Marie.
the acknowledgement is one sentence, and it's not only recognizing the Lenape people, but it's also saying that CB6 will continue being a good steward of this land. So it's a continuation. So it's a combination of the two. I think it's appropriate, and it is only one sentence.
Yeah, and you know, Robert shared that he works at an institution, and almost all cultural institutions in this city now do land acknowledgements, and it's a much longer land acknowledgement. And if we were gonna do that, we could work with a Lenape group and write something up. You know, I don't think we can just write it up ourselves, right, or take from another institution. But yeah, I think being good stewards, and I think it's a reminder that unless you came here on a slave ship, everybody on this land is a migrant. And I think that message is important right now.
Go ahead, Tony.
I have to admit
Sorry.
that I'm a little,
Yeah,
I kind of understand what Jim is talking about.
yeah.
Okay, I have this concern about this being sort of a platitude in a way.
Yeah,
Which sort of disturbs
Exactly.
me. And, because how are we good stewards of this land when we're constantly building, destroying? I mean, how are we good stewards of this land?
I mean, I think we need to try to be better stewards, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but when you have, all of a sudden, building even higher and nothing stops it. I mean, this city is constantly being bombarded.
Yeah,
I just feel a little, listen, I'm all for it.
yeah,
I'm a minority like everybody
Yeah.
else. And my brother actually was a doctor
Okay, Google,
in
stop.
in an Indian reservation.
yeah.
So I know what it's like and the
Yeah.
problems they go through. It just seems like a little platitude to me. It's like, okay, here's a crumb. You know what I'm saying? It's like it really does not feel significant in the sense that it's okay, we can say it. I don't have any objection to saying it, but I really would like to have something that's a little more substantial.
Yeah, and we can do that.
It's
Yeah.
more of a guiding principle, I would
Yeah.
imagine, and so the actual guidance and the vision that would need to be fleshed out some more, but it's a good position to start with.
Right. I don't feel it's just a platitude because it's talking about the Lenape people, but it's also talking about we as members of Community Board 6, you're correct in terms of what's happened and the buildings that have been built in Manhattan, but we on a monthly basis or a weekly basis, based on your committee that you're on, is that we strive to be good stewards and also good stewards of where we are located. So I
Right.
think it's a combination of talking about the Lenape people, but also our responsibilities going forward. So that's why I don't consider it to be a platitude. It's showing what they did and what we as Community Board 6 are continuing to do. So I don't consider it a platitude.
Yeah, and I see it, I agree with you, Ava Marie, and I also agree with you that this is a starting point too, and we can do more. This is just a starting point.
Can I just, so Rob, is it your?
Actions speak louder than words.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Actions speak louder than words.
Yeah.
Actions speak louder
Yeah.
than words. I mean,
Jim, I
Yeah, but
haven't,
then
Jim, I haven't,
the people that,
Jim, I haven't recognized
not.
you. Can I please finish my sentence?
Sure.
Thank you.
sure,
Robert, I just wanted to ask you, since your organization uses this statement, in what other ways have they maybe operationalized it, or do you get some of that feedback as well from,
I've not seen, I
or
don't,
have you
I
seen?
don't get any of the feedback. I have not seen it come through. When we opened up our new exhibition over on, at that location, we did have a member of the Lenape community and other parts of the community come in, make an official announcement and statement, and they had a performance. So it was there, the electeds were there, the members of the community were there. That was well received. It went really well, but I've not heard any pushback at all from that.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
and I've seen other institutions, like a Lincoln Center and places like that have done performances and
Yeah.
included
Mhm.
Lenape, an organization that I'm part of, Dance NYC, made it specific that they give funding to certain Lenape groups and grants and to do work, yeah.
I mean, and I think to your point about
Yeah.
it being a starting point, I mean,
Yeah.
we do nothing right now.
Do
So,
things.
so
This is why
Yeah.
I don't disagree that this is not enough,
Yeah.
but I also am not opposed to this being the starting point
No.
for the organization. So I guess I'm in favor of.
Don't get me wrong, I'm
Yeah.
not opposed to it.
can I speak
I don't
now?
want you, I don't want you to
Right.
think that I'm opposed to it.
Right.
I will vote in favor. I just feel like we should be doing, like, what is the feedback we're getting from the
Yep.
Lenape people about
Right.
this? Is the Lenape people gonna say, okay, you're good stewards, what are you doing about it?
What else can we do?
Yeah,
What else can you
these
do?
are all valid
Yeah.
points.
I mean,
Exactly.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Jim.
Then Brendan has his hand up too.
Jim?
As I was saying, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, but as I said, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but as I said, actions speak louder than words. Every time I've spoken on this, on this board or done anything with this board over the last 25 odd years, I've always done my best to represent the people of the city of New York. I didn't do it as representations for the Lene Lenape era. And I didn't do it just to, to virtue signal. This is not what this is about. If you're not doing your very best to take, I forget the wording, and I don't have the resolution right in front of me at the moment, but if you're not being a good steward of the land of the city of New York, then you're not doing your job. And I say that as a
Yeah.
member of the land use committee.
Okay, go ahead, Brendan.
It's not
just-
necessary. I think it's superfluous and performative. It's ridiculous.
Okay, so
Right.
since a lot of the resolution would be operational stuff implemented by the office, there are a couple of operational type questions that I have, just to make sure we're on the same page. So the first thing is, obviously, if this passes committee and full board, this is something that we can put in the script for all of our meetings. But not all committee chairs are good about following the script and may skip over this. So if someone skips over the acknowledgement, what should be done and who should do it? Like, should the office step in? Should another committee member step in? Just making sure we're on the same page in that regard.
Yeah, but that's a good point. I mean, I think everyone's made valid points here, and I don't feel like so strong in either direction. I think it's all good points. And I also think that no one should be forced to do this, right? So if a committee chair decides not to do it, they don't have to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep, just making sure we're on the same page.
yeah.
Should that be on the resolution that it's not forced?
I mean, I think that's a
Sounds
procedure point, right? So if we
Yeah,
pass
I
it,
don't think we need to get into the
Yeah,
like
yeah,
yeah.
mechanisms,
yeah,
kind of
Yeah.
that level of detail in the
Okay.
resolution. But it's a good point. And I will also mention that we did share this with the other committee
Just brought
chairs
up it- we brought
of
up
land
it.
use.
Exhibition,
And,
with.
Excuse me, guys,
Oh, sorry.
we're we did bring this up at we did
Exec committee,
share
yeah.
this with the executive committee, and we shared the resolution with the chair of the land use committee and one other
Parks,
committee.
because it could
and the
also be a
parks,
issue, yeah,
Mhm.
So, and
yeah.
I don't think you had.
On information,
Yes, go ahead, Jim.
on information, the resolution reads that CB6 will include the following land acknowledgement at the beginning of its meetings. It doesn't talk about committee meetings, it talks about meetings.
Yeah,
Well, committee meetings are meetings, I think.
So that would be the entire board. That would implies to me full board. So I don't think it would be discretionary by a committee chair. It would be required. And I presume it would require recitation at every committee meeting. So it's ridiculous.
Okay,
okay.
shall we go ahead and vote? So
And
will
make
someone
motion,
make a
make
motion?
motion.
I second it, okay.
Okay, when I call your name, please say whether you are in favor, opposed, abstain, or not entitled. Tanya Arias,
Abstain this time.
Jim Collins,
Opposed.
Rob Barfin,
In favor.
Ava Marie Lassiter,
In favor.
Rachel Patel,
In favor.
and Steve Perez.
In favor.
With 4 committee members in favor, 1 opposed, and 1 abstention, this resolution passes.
Thank you. Now, we'll do chair's report. I mentioned last time that, as many of you are aware, there are 2 charter revision commissions going on right now.
Yeah.
We have more information now than we did when we last met. So I don't know if you all are aware, there have been 2 reports that have been released now. So there's the one that the city council is running is called the New York City Commission to Strengthen Local Democracy. So they've released a preliminary staff report
Mhm.
on April 21st. And there is a section on community boards. It talks about many of the same things that we have already discussed, and we've actually passed resolutions on and put into budget requests. So, for example, the Manhattan Borough President testified about increasing funding for community boards, which we've asked for in our budget requests, and also talked about requiring the city to support community boards in identifying facilities for public meeting space, which this board has also put into, resolutions and budget requests and things. So it aligns very well with things that we've already discussed, and along those dimensions. I bring that up because, so today, because they're asking for more testimony, Sandy had asked if we wanted to provide testimony. And so based on things that we've already discussed, I wrote up a snippet of testimony for her to,
Perfect.
submit on our behalf, because it simply reiterates those points, and it's already the
Yeah.
things that are
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
preliminary report. So, but however, I did want to point out that, and I will share this information by email with the committee
Please.
for next time.
Yeah,
Please, yeah.
So it won't be a discussion for today, but I did want to raise, because now we have these reports, we can look at them. So there's that report, which also, there are a couple of very interesting items in there that we might want to look at and might want to take up. But what I'd like you to do is to read the reports and then email me and Matt,
Okay,
if you think there are issues that you think we as a committee should,
yes.
are if you're interested in addressing. So, but there are two options, items that I wanted to raise, and that one was, they do talk about advice and consent for appointment of commissioners, which is something that came up last time around, with the charter revision. They talk about adding mechanisms for impeaching and recalling the mayor,
Oh,
which is another part of the report.
Yeah.
So that is something we may want to talk about at our next meeting. And then there's the third piece, which is very interesting, because we did talk about, when we had that whole discussion about bridge loans,
Right.
nonprofits who were not getting. So the Manhattan Borough President, when he testified, basically said one of the number one issues facing our cities that we're not paying them. It wasn't specifically to the capital projects, but it was in general about how nonprofits are not getting paid, who are for delivering contractual services to the city. So there's a whole appendix on this report that is procurement reform and ideas about, and it does not have to do with bridge loans.
thank God.
It's other ways
Mhm.
to address the systemic issue there. And then also the Mayor's Commission released its preliminary report, which has some of the same themes. So I would, again, my suggestion is we take a look at these reports, we will send them out
Would you,
through the
would you please
office.
send them out?
I will send them out through the
Yeah.
office, and then you take a look at them, tell me which topics you think we as a committee might want to, address at our, and we'll have it as our agenda item for our next meeting and then into next year.
It's
Go
great you
ahead.
brought it up, because I was gonna bring it up in new business,
Okay.
what we were, what were we going to do about the new charter revisions? Is there any mention in any of the reports about, continuing ULURP, the ULURP process?
Land use was a big part of it. I didn't have it's a long report, so I didn't have a chance to look at every.
But that will be
piece
in
of it.
those that you're gonna send us?
Yes,
Yeah, because the land use is important.
it was specifically one of the topics that was addressed, and I think the mayor's commission specifically.
I thought I'd
yeah.
heard that the city council was trying to create something, so a way that they could, remove the mayor as well. Did anybody?
She's
hear
talking
that?
about ULURP.
No,
ULURP.
I'm talking about,
Yeah.
well, it's separate, but
Yeah.
one of the issues that was on there, which was moving the mayor from office. And I heard that the New York City Council was working on something as well on their end.
yes,
Correct.
so I think it might be the same thing, because what he read off
It's
was
by
from
the
the
New York
council,
City
it's from the
Council.
council,
Okay.
yeah.
It is related to that. So
Okay.
anyway, we will send out the information. We can discuss that
Please,
next time,
yeah.
but I just wanted to.
But in the meantime, we email you with any.
Yeah, with,
amendments.
with just what are the topics from those reports that you think we should discuss in our committee?
Absolutely. All right.
Okay. I think that's all we have. Any other old or new business?
They're actually
Anybody would
still
like to
having
raise?
hearings on the,
I have an
Yes.
item of old business, but I'll be bringing it up next meeting.
Okay,
Yeah, so then a motion to adjourn?
I have old business, but I need to bring it up next meeting.
Yes.
Yes.
I second.
Okay, thank you. Therefore, the meeting is adjourned
Okay.
at 8:09. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.